Hello again, I'm Mike Baryla from Tracy Rifle and Pistol. Last week we talked a little bit about how AR-15 triggers work. This week I'm going to go over a couple of my favorites and how they work. If you didn't get to see last week's video, here's a recap of how AR-15 triggers work. This is the AR-15 trigger group assembled outside of the lower receiver as it would typically sit on the inside. When you pull the trigger on an AR-15, the hammer falls forward. It hits the firing pin, which hits the primer and sends the bullet down range. At the same time, the bolt carrier is actually moving backwards to reset the trigger. It pushes the hammer back just far enough for the disconnector to grab it on the front end. It can do that because of the spring behind the disconnector. As you let off of the trigger, the disconnector actually lets go of the hammer and the trigger grabs it at the very bottom there. This starts the whole process all over again. I have two of my favorite triggers here. I have a Geissele SSAE and a Timney Skeletonized Trigger. First, I'd like to talk about the difference between a single stage and a two-stage trigger. I like to describe it this way. A single stage trigger is much like a thin rod of glass you're putting your finger up against and just trying to break. A two-stage trigger is much like that same rod, but now there's a little spring in front of that rod of glass. You take up the tension from that spring and then you push just that little bit more and you get a clean, crisp break. Geissele makes several different variations of AR-15 triggers. Some have a flat trigger blade like this dynamic 3-gun, but my favorite is the SSAE. This Geissele SSAE trigger group works much like the standard AR-15 trigger group with one major exception. They've moved the sear drop point from the front of the trigger here to the second hook on the disconnector. You now have a 2.3 pound first stage with a 1.3 pound second stage. Trigger retails for about $250. Next up is the Timney Trigger. In my opinion, this is the best single stage trigger on the market. You'll notice right away it's significantly different than the Geissele and the standard AR-15 trigger group. This is because to achieve a single stage pull, Timney had to move around the components and house them all in a special unitized trigger group. This trigger will give you a trigger pull of about 3 pounds and it retails for about $275. Now normally on an AR-15 trigger group, the hammer pin is actually held in by a detent in the hammer and the trigger pin is held in by the hammer spring itself. Because the Timney is designed differently, this isn't possible. So Timney used set screws from the top to hold the trigger group in place. These are vital for the reliability and safety of the gun. To reduce any potential problems, this is the only time I recommend using a captured pin system like the KNS pin system. Both of these triggers are available from Tracy Rifle and Pistol with free installation. We hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe on here. Check us out at facebook.com/TracyRAP. And if you value your firearms rights, check out firearmspolicy.org.